Hello dear, it's Heather, and you're watching Save Today with Heather J. As I say in every video, I am somebody who is spent her entire adult life living paycheck to paycheck and being one life event away from financial crisis. And in order to change that, I needed to create a budget and stick to it. And I knew for myself that the sticking to it was going to be the thing that was hard. I have, over the course of my adult life, tried several times to create a budget, and I've gotten maybe 6 to 8 weeks in and lost track, and then I'd start over and I'd lose track and I'd lose interest, and there wasn't enough money and things got tight and uncomfortable, and I just quit over and over and over again. So I decided at this point in time to go ahead and create a YouTube channel. I know that in order to be on YouTube, there has to be consistency. And so that consistency was going to create a required consistency for me. In order to check in with you, I have to check in with me first. So I decided to create this YouTube channel. So far, it has been very helpful. July, so I started in May. I had all of May, all of June, and then July. And mid-June, things got very, very uncomfortable and became difficult. And it was very hard to keep moving forward. It was very discouraging. I've talked about that some in some of my previous videos, and I'll go into that a little bit more in depth, probably as we do my Debts and Desires video towards the end of the month. But having this channel helps to stay on track. Again, I could just decide at any point for any reason to just quit. There's no requirement. I'm not going to get fired because when you do this, you're doing it for yourself. You are your own boss. But this definitely has helped. But today's video is going to be about how I got to the YouTube channel, how I prepared my budget for camera ready. Because there are some extra steps you need to do to have your budget on camera that you don't necessarily need to do to just be doing your budget yourself. And in all honesty, I say have to do, need to do. None of it's required. There are no rules here. You get to make up the rules as you go. But for myself, I needed to have it on camera as pretty as I could, right? That's that's what YouTube is about. That's what any visual media is about, is making things look good. So the looking good initially in my mind wasn't really necessary, but ultimately I'm finding is really helping out. So I'm going to kind of go over all of the steps that we've gone through to get to where it's camera ready. For myself, my budget starts on my electronic device, on my electronic calculator. And so what I had to do initially to start my budget was to get my pay dates laid out and to get my bills laid out. And so I know today is July 19th. I know I got paid on the 14th. So I click on that and go back. So I go on to the 14th and I create and I just say payday. And then I get to set it up for how often that happens. And I want this to repeat every other week. Repeats every 2 weeks on Friday. And I want it to never end. So I get to adjust all of this. And now I'm done. And I can save. And I can go back to the month as a whole. And you see now my payday is listed in there every 2 weeks. That's interesting. Oh, that's the phone bill, not the payday. So every 2 weeks, my payday's on there. Then I do the same thing for my phone bill. The 17th of every month, I do the same thing for my rent. And that's a good start. It's our phone is always in our hand. Our electronic devices are always with us. But I found for myself, for budgeting purposes, this wasn't ideal. I wasn't referring to my electronic calendar as often as I needed to create and stick to a budget. And it was very cumbersome to come in and change things as things needed to be adjusted. For example, as my phone bill has increased or reduced, or as I need to make payment arrangements, or as things like the utilities whose dates and totals change. I found that very cumbersome in here, and I just wasn't referring to it enough. So in addition to this was step one for me. I then went and got one of these calendars, and this is a 2-year calendar where we have the entire month, and this one started this one started in January of 2023 and goes all the way through to I should have these things planned out. This one goes all the way through to December of 2024. So I have all of 2023 and all of 2024 here at my fingertips. So I essentially did exactly the same thing on here as I had done on my electronic device. I circled all of my pay dates all the way through this book. So all the way again to December 2024, I know where those pay dates are. I then went back and I found which pay date encompassed the first of the month, so that my next month's rent would be paid for that. So I wrote that down on every single month. Then I went through my accounts and found exactly when all of these bills were coming out, and I wrote those down on those dates. And so then I have my budget here at a fingertips, and I wrote everything in pencil. And I wrote it all the way through. You're going to see here all the way in 2024, I have my phone bill, I have my rent and utilities as things get added to and taken away. And this has been great also because things like my credit card payment, I know I have X amount of payments until X amount of date. This is my last credit card payment here in February, and I know in March that's not on there. I wrote it in pencil so that I could make changes as changes happen. Again, my phone bill is one that has had several changes. As I've added lines, that phone bill has gone up. As financing has quit, then that phone bill has gone down. So I'll need to adjust that moving forward. So then this one still is less than ideal because I don't carry a purse. I don't carry a pocketbook. I don't have this at my fingertips all of the time. And I have to go and find it, which, you know, sometimes things get lost. But this has been good because it gives me everything kind of at a visual glance. And if this was just me, this and my notebook would have been okay. Because then I've got my calendar dates. I know exactly what's coming, and I can use my notebook to go forward. And let's take a look at what that looks like on the notebook. So I've got some of these things written out, and this notebook on the surface of it is fine. You know, it's just me going over these numbers. It doesn't matter how sloppy and messy it is. I'm the only one who needs to make sense of this. But as you can see, things get really messy, and I want to flip back here to June and see how chaotic and messy this one is. And this is overwhelming to me visually as I'm trying to work it, and this is incredibly overwhelming visually on the camera. So I wanted to make sure that things were a little bit nicer than that. So I did go and print off of the internet some free blank calendars so I could mark on the top what month it is, and I could fill in the dates in this. And then I went through and I printed up probably, I think, 18 pages of these, and then I cut them so that they would fit in my book, and I highlighted these dates. And these highlighted colors for me are when July ends and August starts. And then I carry this color to my next one when August ends, and then September starts as a different color. So my entire month of August on both sheets has the same color. And that was just something visually for me. As I'm getting into this, of course, I did all 18 pages at once, so I won't be making any changes anytime soon. But what I'm realizing is on camera, it would be better for me to just have my paid dates highlighted versus the actual month, because I think that presents better. It makes better sense on camera that these are the pay dates, these are the pay dates, and what bills come through there. So then what I did is I went and got this book. It's a good size book to handle. It's very sturdy with that solid cover. And I glued in, well, I have these loose in their months with as much pages between them as I estimate it's going to be. But of course things come up and I add and take away. So those aren't glued in until the month I start. So at the end of June, as I was closing out June, then I started my July. I glue sticked that into my paper, and then I can go over on camera with you all of those dates. This is much more visually pleasing to me than this same thing. So this is July 2023 here. All of my really bad handwriting, all sloppy in pencil. This way I've got it all nice and neat and tidy there, and I can see what's going on very well. Then when you set up the calendar, you kind of go through. I know I'm going to have, I have my calendar, I have my month of May, and all of those, whatever pay dates are there. So then you just you write in your monthly budget and everything you've got here based on when you've set things up in your calendar. Then you go do paycheck number 1 on its own page, and immediately paycheck number 2 on its own page. And then these that I've skipped over real briefly, these two are tied into my flexible spending. So I have set up a space where I have enough room to write out all of my flexible spending. And then I have separate from that all of the totals of what that separate spending is. And I purposely put that in between paycheck number 1 and paycheck number 2, so that I wasn't having to go back and forth. And I didn't want flexible spending just for paycheck 1 and then just for paycheck 2. I didn't want to add extra pages to that. And then I have my debt overview, which isn't filled out yet because I'm going to do the overview at the end of the month, with the idea being that some things will fall off of this as I either pay it off and or get payment arrangements and get that set into my budget. So once something, let me go back to July or to June as an example. Here's my debt overview for June. I have all of these things that are my debts. So this credit card came up and I needed to add that on there. This was something that I wasn't aware of. I needed to add that as a debt. But I have since contacted that creditor and made payment arrangements. So going forward, this drops off of my debt overview at the end of the month because it is now added into my payments going forward. So that's not going to sit forever and eternity in my debts category. As soon as that comes over and starts being part of my regular monthly budget, it drops off of there. So I'm not going to fill this out for every single month right now the way I did these calendars, right? Because that's going to change. There's going to be things that come up that I'm not aware of, and there's going to be things that go away as I make payments on that. And then this is where I've slipped in the next page. I think that that's going to go there unless I add another page there. So I'm going to go back to this notebook really quick and just kind of flip through. If this was just for me, and I have seen other people on other channels doing this, and it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't particularly care for my handwriting as I'm hurrying and scratching this along. And I don't find all of these scratch offs and these marks to be visually appealing here on camera. And when I come back and refer to this, it gets very chaotic as I move these forward. So I go from the phone to this to my paper, and I write everything out in paper. I've got my monthly budget, I've got my monthly estimate, all of the bills that are going to be in there, and then my flexible spending, and I try and make sense of this. This setup is probably not something I would have done, especially this little part here. This becomes redundant when I've already done these other things up there. But it turns out that this setup it makes sense in my head. It makes things a little bit easier to follow along. And this gives me a very clear idea of what I'm left with. But you'll see here, when I initially set up July, I know I have this much income coming in for sure. I know I have this much going out in bills for sure. And then I have some flexible spending. And initially I just gave myself the same numbers last month. And I very quickly realized I did not begin to have enough extra here. And so I had to make some adjustments. And so this starts to get really sloppy. And then when I did my U-Haul, I did it for all 3 boxes. And when I initially wrote it up, and then realized in referring to my calendar that I only had 1 coming out during this month because of how the paycheck's laid out. So then I had to change those numbers, which changed these numbers, which changed these numbers. And suddenly we're getting very, very sloppy. So for me, this isn't visually appealing to be placing on screen. So then when I go over here and I make this same one, that's August. So when I make the same setup here, so I've got this monthly setup on my chicken scratch and this monthly setup on my calendar. I've got my colors, which match my calendar colors here, very on purpose to keep some consistency and some fluidity. And this is much nicer to take a look at. Let's go and check the next page here, where I've got paycheck number 1 spending as compared to paycheck number 2. So this, you'll see that this is much easier to follow than this is. This looks very messy. The colors help with that. The colors help kind of break that down visually. And then I have my, I don't know if this is all the way in camera, but I have my week 1 and my week 2 spending right here with paycheck number 1. And then that is easy to refer to here, my week spending, and those are all together here with paycheck number 1. So I've already set up paycheck number 2 in July for you. This is what that looked like for me at home. And this is what that's going to look like for you when I do that on camera. And I just find again that this is much more pleasing to the eye. This is much more camera ready and appealing. And this wouldn't be necessary for me to do for myself, but having done this now, this is into my 3rd month, I'm going to show you this chaos here from June. This, what the heck is happening here? I don't even know. I can't come back to this in July and really take a look at this and know what happened here. It's so jumbled and chaotic, and I've got notes over here and notes over here. And so even though this portion was just for the camera, this portion has made things much easier in my headspace. Then the other thing to factor in was, aside from how I wanted this to look and making this pleasant in appearance, was my background. Background's kind of important. Again, giving the camera something visually to look onto was really nice. I currently am filming in my kitchen, and I didn't like the look of this kitchen counter. I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly clean. It's nothing scratched. I just don't like that look. That looks very much like a kitchen counter. And if I wanted to move and be working at the dining room table or at my sewing table, if I wanted to change my location at any point in time, I didn't want this to be noticeably jarring. And this isn't my personality. There are some people who have gone out and purchased a piece of carpet as their background, or used contact paper on cardboard as their background. And for some people, they would have chosen something like this on purpose to be their background, because it is not jarring. It's very melt in the background, not drawing attention, and that's their personality, and that's fine. I did choose to bring my personality in, which means my background is changing, and sometimes my background's very busy and chaotic. You know, my background in June had a lot of things going on, and it was very hard sometimes to focus on the paper because of all the noise happening back here. But that is my personality in these crafts. And that's the other thing I want to encourage people. Who am I to tell you what to do? I'm nobody. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you how I have done it. But also, I want to encourage each and every one of you, whether it's a YouTube channel or how you're going through your life, be you on camera and off. So for me, it's the crafts and the art, and I need to bring that in. That's a part of who I am. If you're a mechanic or a cook or a gamer, bring that into your channel. Don't try and be something you're not. Be true to yourself. If you're somebody who's very punny in real life, bring that punniness into your video. I'm just telling you how I've done it, and I want you to create your own space where you can do what you wanted to do. I don't know why I really felt compelled to kind of do this video, and I don't think this video is coming across as particularly polished and professional, but I did want to kind of go over and just kind of note those steps and how, in creating something that would be visual for my YouTube audience, I also created something that was easier and better for me and more created the consistency. So even though I just created this book specifically for YouTube, if I stopped YouTube day after tomorrow, I likely would still continue to do this book, because I feel like this is what's giving me some consistent success with that. This is much easier to look at, and honestly, I've looked at it on my laptop. I've written it down on this notebook over and over and over again, and then I've written it down again here. So the more times I write it down, look at it, discuss it, the more times, the more it sticks with me, the harder it is to forget. So that's all this video is about, really, is just kind of going over how I decided to set up my budgeting journey on YouTube, and why I made the choices I made. It's not a tutorial, it's not a how-to, it's just this is what I've chosen to do, and by all means, please do the thing you've chosen to do. I have decided before I started my channel I needed to bring my crafts in, but I was only going to discuss that at the end of my videos, and that's where we're at now. I'm done talking about the budgeting. I want to talk a little bit about July's project. July was a Christmas in July project where I'm working on a stocking that has been in progress for literal years, nearly a decade, and I've gotten hung up on a couple of different things, and I've allowed it to sit and not be worked on. I've allowed it to be ignored. And so I needed to change that, and I made that commitment to myself that I was going to get that done in July. In some of my other videos, I've discussed some of the challenges I had with that, and I've been able to work past those challenges in order to move this forward. And so I'm just going to bring this into the camera here, and I want to talk about, last we looked at, I had just made my zero dog, and I was talking about how I was going to attach it. It is now attached and exactly how I wanted it to be. I am so thrilled. When I struggled as much as I struggled with my Jack Skellington, this was such a challenge and so frustrating. I fully expected to get the same challenges with this zero dog because this was something I had never tried to do before, and this came together so simply, so easily, literally just fell into place, and I cannot be more thankful for that. I will tell you, I spent an incredible amount of time trying to figure out what I was going to do for the eye and what I was going to do for his little blinking Rudolph nose and his Halloween colors, and these came together very well. This little black thing here is actually a beading spacer for necklaces. And I don't know if it shows up on that camera well or not, but I have this teeny tiny little Delica bead, which was so small I literally could not get a needle through the center of the hole. I had to string it on the thread and only do one single pass through that. So that is not on there very, very well and could potentially break. That would be devastating, but that's super duper insecure at that point. And then I've got exactly the ruffly, floaty edge I wanted him to have with that, so he's not attached here. And his little ears. In fact, I want to get... So I said it was very important to me to make this and not just buy the manufactured thing and just stick a plastic button on there. I don't know why. I really don't know why. That's just my personality. I wanted to do it myself, but I also wanted it to be recognizable as the thing it's supposed to be, right? I don't want you to think that that's some random deer. I want you to know, looking at that, that is absolutely the Zero the dog with the Jack Skellington. That's why I didn't choose to create out of Fimo clay Jack's face. That's very, very distinctive. And I don't have the faith in my abilities with the Fimo clay, because it's the first time I've ever done anything to create that distinctive Jack Skellington face. So when I bought this particular pack of buttons, I bought it in case I might need to use those faces to go on here for him. But do you see this Zero the dog in there? And how his ears are that kind of wiggly floaty. Here's his tail curling. It was very important to me to get that to look like that, including getting this little wiggle and bump out in those ears. I don't know why I needed to do that, but I just needed to point that out. I needed to do it myself and not use the plastic thing, but I needed the thing to look like the plastic thing so that it was recognizable. I don't know, just a weird thought process. This Jack Skellington, when I stitched this on, I did not give this leg a foot because I want him to be kind of coming out of the flames. And I'm going to end up cutting this bottom hem off and kind of stitch that down so he's coming directly out of this curve in the flame there. When this is hanging up, and I can't do that on camera because this is a flat surface, but when this is hanging up, it's going to be hanging from this back corner, which is giving this kind of diagonal space as it's hanging from the hearth or wherever. And so it is my idea that he's going to be coming out of this flame and be going directly across this piece here, and then his head will end up being stitched on here somewhere. That's the next step, is to get his legs stitched in here and his body stitched to this. And then after that is getting this backing on and sewn around the edges. And how that works is you lay this over the top, stitch along the outside of that, and then cut that off. So he will be stitched in here, but this leg is going to be reticulating and hanging off of here, and this arm is going to be sewn this way. I needed these pieces to be able to get out of the way while I stitch this onto that. This is going to be like a joker's toe where this isn't actually attached. That's what this little stitch line here is for. And so this will be a dangly pointy down toe, and wherever that ends up being, that's where his foot will be stitched on. So that's the next step, is to get Jack Skellington actually anchored on to the stocking so that I can start getting the backing on, getting my lining, and getting the ruff on there. So that's where I'm at. This was a weird one-off video that has nothing really to do with any of the actual numbers and budgeting. This is just a discussion of how I chose to get things camera ready, to give those who might be considering starting their own journey some ideas on just some ways that it can be done. The only thing I want to tell you how to do, or what to do, or do it this way, is to be true to who you are. Don't come on camera and try to be one of these other budgeters, one of these other great super big personalities. Like, be 100% authentically, truly you. For myself, I'm that comforting grandma, right? That's who my personality is. When I say to you at every opening, hello dear, that is something I say in my everyday life to all of the people I work with. That's me. That's who I am, and that's who I want to portray on the video. Whoever you are, punny, musical, you know, if you're the mother, if you're the nurturer, if you're the wild, crazy, adrenaline junkie, Bring that into your person, bring that into your channel. Be true to you, create something that works for you, and then your tribe will come to you. Those will, you know, I'm not somebody who enjoys puns at the rate some other people do. I probably wouldn't be the person who's joining that channel, but there are thousands of other people, probably millions of other people who will enjoy that, who will come to you. You don't need to worry about making me happy. You need to worry about making yourself happy. And then those people who enjoy who you truly are will be there. They will be there. Just be you in every aspect of your life, especially on YouTube. Anyway, that's me. Thank you for joining me. Wherever you are, whatever it is you're doing today, please have fun. Bye-bye now.